and having a practice, a spiritual practice, a mindfulness practice, whatever that practice means for you, that allows us to always come back to find the joy inside that's always there, to find the peace inside, to find the bigness inside, the spaciousness in the heart. So when you see your brothers and sisters burning, you can still hold it without hatred. Because I know I certainly have held it with a lot of hatred. And I certainly have held it with a lot of anger. And I don't have shame about that. What I have is an understanding of what it felt like to have that anger and that hatred. And so I know it very well. And so when it comes again, because it will, I know to recognize it, and then I know how to take care of it. And in the past, I didn't know how to do that. In the past, I would just get absorbed in it, and I would become exactly the violence that I said I was the peace activist fighting. It's really deep, right? Because as activists on the ground, we feel justified to call the enemy, because we are the righteous ones, right? And we wear that righteous cap, right? And this is our persona. We identify ourselves as such. And this is what gives us our ego. And it's also a very dangerous thing. It gives us I think it gives us the inclination and the intention to do good, to do justice, but it's not enough. It's not enough. I used to think it was enough because that's the way I used to roll. That's the way I would be. Until I really stopped and burnt out and couldn't move anymore, and took myself to Plum Village in France and started to look inside and starting to discover that I needed to shut up a little bit and listen more. And I needed to not just listen to people, but listen to me, something I had never done. It's not in our culture to listen to ourselves because, gosh, who knows what we might find. So this is a practice, of listening to ourselves very deeply. And this is something that I was very privileged and humbled to participate in a community that offered me the doors, that opened the doors for me to take that time. And coming back now when those fires are burning, as in Baltimore a few months ago, and standing in the communities that I work with and represent, I felt anger again. I mean, I'm not going to lie about that. I hadn't felt that anger for quite a number of years, but I was angry because I was looking at the media and I was hearing all the wrong things that were being said. And the only thing that didn't allow me to go back to those spaces was this ability to breathe. This simple thing. I mean, it sounds really mundane and kind of foolish at times. And I cannot convince 60% of my activist friends that it is like real. But it's movement, right? We're getting there. But just to be able to stop in the midst of something that's really igniting you again, bringing that fire up again, even starting to burn again, just to stop and breathe, just this simple act of 3 breaths. I mean, it's the miracle of mindfulness, right? I mean, it's not just words. It's not just like a pithy frame. It's the truth. If we actually stop and breathe, we have the space that now we see what we're doing. And once we see what we're doing, we get to make a decision if that's what we really want to do. And when we see that we might do something we might not be so happy with, we might just change. In that very moment, we might just change what we do. But it's a practice again and again, and I fall often. But, what else to do but to get back up, right? Yeah.
But not everybody has the privilege to be able to go to Plum Village. So when you are in the community and you see, you mentioned it sometimes in your own behavior that you could get that fire burning so much and almost misguided fire, if you will, because you want to control it to the extent that you do control fire. Do you understand? Because you want it to direct it in the right way. You want your anger, your disappointment, your frustration directed and purposely placed. So how do you have learned to do that? In your work in the community, how do you take the people who are understandably upset and want to go and throw bricks in windows because they're so frustrated and nobody's been listening to me? How do you help them at least experience a piece of the calm that you have?
I listen. I listen. There's nothing else to do but listen to someone. And I think if you really listen from a space of non-judgment and are really wanting to just listen, not even wanting to change it for them, not even wanting to make it better for them, just to listen. Just in the process of doing door knocking as we do organizing in these very communities, it's an amazing thing, the transformation that occurs at someone's door on a Saturday morning at 8 a.m. when they open the door and you ask them one question, and next thing you know, they're inviting you in to sit at their kitchen table, and you're just listening. And it might not seem like a big activist thing. It might not change the world, and it won't get that corrupt politician out of office, or it might not result in them not being kicked out of their house by some landlord who doesn't care. But just that moment for them of having someone recognize that they're human and they're just the same, it's so deep. It's a moment of love. It's a moment of connection that grows the heart a little bit, that gives that person a space to know that I'm worthwhile, that I matter. I think that's transformative. I think that's organizing. I think that's justice.
Then how do you take, I'm sorry, I really am, there's a question incoming, but while you go there, Paula, how do you take that, not only sharing that with the people who may be frustrated in the community, how do you take that to the community leaders? Because that really is what it is. If we all, as I again humbly say, remove labels and listen, then we really start to connect. So how do you get the leaders, the people who are supposed to be the adults in the room, how do you get them to take on that same compassion?
I think it's a slow process. I'm still figuring it out. But what I do know is that we have to be the peace that we want to see in the world. And Tai says that. It's a very deep teaching for me. I come back to it again and again. It doesn't matter what I say. It matters how I move in the spaces. It's the way I bring myself into the space that will share with my fellow activists the way we may need to do the movement differently, so that we can take this movement of justice to a space where it's never been before. Because I think that's where we need to go. We've done
She planned that. She told me